everybody, Steele here. So I was going to show you guys the steering column we've been working on as a completed assembly, so that you can kind of get an idea what it looks like, and I was going to kind of go over each area because it's kind of a hodgepodge of little problems to overcome on each area to make it one piece. So here it is. So we wanted to use the stock column in the car so it looked original, and then we added the original collapsible shaft from the Cadillac here. So it has a rag joint in the end with the splined unit here. We'll go on the steering box. This is collapsible. It gets an accident, so it'll catch you in the chin and stretch your neck out. Starting from the top, actually, I adapted a C10 ignition switch to the inside of the bell. So on this car, it had turn signals. So I was kind of surprised at that. Anyway, they come out on the same side as the shifter comes out on, right here. So I haven't put an arm on it yet. I need to get an arm from Classic or somebody, but yeah, that's where those ignition switches come out. So this is updated to a late model ignition switch. I had to, of course, you saw in the earlier videos, gut that and adapt that to fit the hole. I'm going to use the original shifter. Of course, it was a 3-speed originally, and so I'm going to use the original shifter. We're not going to paint it or do any chroming or anything right now, because later on the car is going to get taken apart and a proper restoration and shiny stuff on it. We're just making the car run and drive right now. We're going to do a shakedown and get all the bugs worked out of it, and then later on when he gets some cash together, he can get it painted. So anyway, basically you have three shafts. You have the outer tube, inner tube, which is basically your shifter arm. Okay. Well, we made that little hole right there, and you shift this, and that goes down. And that'll change your gears. The bottom here, we use PVC between the shifter shaft and the outer tube, just because it doesn't get a whole lot of motion and it'll take up a lot of space. It's hard to get a good bearing going there or something else to take up the space. Between the actual steering shaft down there, I took it down to my buddy. He turned the shaft down to 3/4 inch, and I got some oil light bushings, put them inside here, and so it has oil light bushings, plus I made this cap for the end of it to kind of clean things up and keep it all contained, so it's nice and tight. On the shaft here, you can see this is where I put the piece of tubing inside the original slider here, the original U-joint. And I put 2 hardened grade 8 bolts through it. So that's good and safe. Never going to come apart. You couldn't break that if you had to. So there it is. There's the original looking column. Will come in. Will be put in the car tomorrow, and then got to adapt the shifter, and there you go. An updated 1947 Buick steering column. So this is the original column bell that holds the turn signal switch assembly. You'll see a aluminum boss in the lower left and upper right, and we had to cut those down about 1/4 inch toward the bottom of the column to make area for the ignition switch to fit in the bell itself. Here's the plate I made to attach the turn signal switch to. The holes don't line up anymore because of the new switch, so we had to make a plate for it, the new holes to line up to. So we haven't yet still ground down the inside of it yet, so we had to lower that plate inside there so the ignition switch will fit. In hindsight, I would have used a earlier model ignition switch, like from 68 through 72. The later model one was just a little too. So we determined that we're going to cut off 3 inches off the end of the steering column tube and the inner shifter tube to access the actual column or the actual shaft inside. That's all we're going to need to have hanging out the bottom to attach to the original Cadillac part. and make it secure. And here you can see I'm going to start cutting out the shifter arm that we're going to weld to the shifter tube. Drill a hole through here to make it fit to the existing shifter arm that comes up from the Cadillac transmission. Here's the shifter arm. So try it in the hole, a little too small. Go up a little bit more with a step bit. So here's a shifter bracket that we cut out of the scrap. Go clean up a little bit and weld it on. So here's the 1.5 inch PVC I bought. The small piece there is a threaded insert, and the larger piece is a 1.5 inch union. Put the two together and make a nice little spacer for the outer steering column and the inner shifter tube. So we're going to put those together and give them a test fit. And the inner nut is a little tight, so we take a drill bit and then open that the inner hole up a little bit, and it'll fit nice and tight, and it'll take up the space between the outer tube and the inner tube. Here's the assembled steering bell with the turn signal switch already in it. That's the wiring block at the bottom that will plug into most aftermarket wiring harnesses. So we're going to take this apart, and we're going to show you the inner piece that we installed that this will screw to. Just like that. So there's where we screw that down to. We lowered that about 1/4 inch or so, and then we drilled new holes that match up to the later model turn signal switch. Now, we had to grind quite a bit of material off the outside of that for it to fit down inside there, but it didn't affect any of the mechanics or usability of it. So we ground off the sides and up toward the back area. So here I'm removing the wires from the wiring block. I took a paper clip and flattened it out a little bit on one end, and you can push the little tabs down and pull each wire out of the clip. You can see I put a piece of tape on and I marked it which wire started and which one ended, so it goes back together the same when I take it apart. Here's the old pieces out of the old steering column. So now we're going to make a little slot so that the wires can come out of the column and run down the bottom of the column. Later on, I'll make a little cover that will cover up the wires so you can't see them inside the car. But until then, they'll be under the column anyways. So there's a slot where the wires are going to come through. They'll run down the bottom of the steering column, and we'll make a little cover for them later on. But until then, we need to run them outside of the column. Normally I would have brought them through lower, but there's a barrier and wouldn't allow the wires to go lower than that area we drilled out. It's important that when you're running wires to a drilled hole that you clean out the areas around the edges. If you don't, they're going to chafe and you end up going to run through into the bare metal of the wires in time. So we clean them up, run around, and then after we get the wires through there, I'll put a piece of rubber around inside there so it won't chafe or run through. So here I put tape on the end of the wires because the little tabs that go into the wiring block are pretty fragile. So I want those to go through and not get all bent up. So I put a little piece of tape around it to make them come through all at the same time. So I fish it through a little carefully here and there and get it through and then end up cutting the tape off it. So I'm going to reattach the bell to the steering column, put all 3 screws back in it again. And then I'm going to take the wires where I pulled them through and I had them all taped. Those areas, the little tabs get pushed down. So you got to pull the little tabs up on the back of the wires or on the little fixtures, and then you can snap them back into the wiring block. That's what I'm doing right there. So the wires go in order back in the wiring block, snap in, and then you're ready for the new wiring harness. So here's the oil light bushing I bought. I had to buy 2 to get the right size. You couldn't get just 1, so I had to buy 2 there. So anyway, they slide together, and we put them over top of the shaft that my buddy turned down. Excuse my thumb, by the way. Anyway, so it slides on the shaft nice and clean. My buddy turned it down to 3/4 inch. So we put that inside there, and everything fits nice and snug. So it won't be rattling around when you're steering the car. I bought this collar, but the collar is not going to work. So eventually you'll see me make a cap for the end of it to tidy everything up. So here's the original slider U-joint unit. And I'll take the bolt out of it. You'll see how loose it fits over top of the shaft. So it should require me to put a piece of 1-inch 120 wall tubing over it, and then weld it into the U-joint itself. See how loose it is? It's just not going to work. And if I drilled that hole out that big, it would compromise the tubing, so it wouldn't have enough strength to hold it again. So we're gonna put some tubing in it and then put 2 1/4-inch hardened bolts in it. You can see the shape of it there. So you can see me. That's where I cut it out, and we slid that new piece of tubing in there, and then we do a little test fit here. You'll see how it fits on there, nice and snug. So that's nice and clean. So I haven't welded it yet, so I'm going to weld it now, and then we'll reposition it, and then we'll drill the holes for the bolts. So here it is welded, and we'll reposition it back over top of the steering shaft. You see it goes on nice and smooth. And then there's the shifter arm we made and it's tacked in place. Everything now, since everything goes full stroke, we'll go ahead and weld it fully. So here's the bottom of the column. We're gonna have to make a cap for the bottom of it to clean everything up. It just looks like hell, and it didn't look bad, but I just want everything to be nice and clean. So you can see we drilled the holes already for the column, and now we're gonna make this cap. It's a piece of plate and a piece of tubing. The tubing isn't the right size and diameter inside, so we'll have to just slice it in half and open it up a little bit. That ring like that. So then we'll take that disc and weld it to the bottom of that, and then finish it all off and paint it black. Screw it on with three stainless screws. That's the beginnings of the cap. So we started out at, and this is what it looks like now. So it's all cleaned up, and then we're gonna spray paint it and then put it on.